Excuse me, sir. This clause flips the liability. The room froze. The tension was so thick, you could practically cut it with a knife. Richard Hawke, the billionaire CEO, was holding a pen above the contract, his eyes scanning the final details before sealing the deal. It was supposed to be a game-changer, a contract worth billions. No one expected Maya Williams, the quiet maid who had been cleaning the conference room, to speak up. But there she was, standing at the edge of the polished mahogany table, her finger pointing at a single clause in the contract. The silence that followed was deafening. Maya wasn't just any maid, she was someone who knew more than she let on. A former financial analyst, Maya had been forced to take up cleaning jobs to care for her ailing mother. Her past was a story no one would ever guess, and that's exactly how she liked it. But today, in this room full of powerful executives, Maya saw something that no one else had. Richard Hawke, the titan of the financial world, stood there, his brow furrowed as his eyes met hers. "Excuse me," he asked, his tone sharp, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his voice. "What do you mean by this clause?" Maya didn't flinch. "It's a trap," she said calmly, her voice unwavering. "If you sign this, your company will take on all the legal and financial risks. You'll be left holding the bag if anything goes wrong." The room went dead quiet. The other executives exchanged uneasy glances, but Richard Hawke, ever the businessman, shook his head. "And who are you to tell me what's wrong with my contract?" Maya's expression didn't change. She was used to being underestimated. It had happened her whole life. She'd been passed over for promotions, ignored in meetings, and treated like she didn't belong. But this time, she wasn't backing down. "I used to work in finance," she replied, her gaze never leaving his. "I know how these contracts work. This one is full of loopholes that could ruin you." There was a long pause. Richard stood there, staring at her, his jaw tightening. He glanced down at the contract, his pen still hovering above the page. Maya's words were like a mirror held up to his face, reflecting the arrogance he had carried for so long, showing him the cracks in his empire. But he wasn't the only one who felt the weight of the silence. His team of lawyers and executives were visibly uncomfortable, their eyes darting around the room, unsure how to handle the situation. After what felt like an eternity, Richard slowly put the pen down. He looked at Maya again, his expression unreadable. For a moment, no one spoke. Maya had done what none of them expected, she had found the flaw in the deal that could have cost Richard everything. And in that silence, as she quietly backed out of the room, she knew that she had won. She had turned the tables. The billionaire, once so certain of his power, now stood in the shadow of her quiet intelligence. Maya Williams had just saved the day, and no one would ever look at her the same way again. "I've never seen a room so silent." Richard Hawke sat there, staring at the contract, his mind racing, his usual confidence nowhere to be found. The executives around him fidgeted uncomfortably, their faces flushed with embarrassment. How had they missed this? How had a maid, someone they considered invisible, caught something so crucial? Maya Williams, the unassuming maid who had pointed out the dangerous clause, had done what none of them could. The boardroom was still in a state of stunned disbelief, and all Richard could think about was how this moment had shattered everything he thought he knew about power. His hand hovered over the contract again, his fingers trembling slightly. Maya, on the other hand, stood near the door, her eyes fixed on the floor. She didn't feel the need to be anywhere else. She didn't need to prove herself. She had already done that. Her past in the world of high finance seemed like a lifetime ago. Now, she was just trying to make ends meet, cleaning up after people like Richard Hawke. But today, she had made the most significant impact of her life, and nobody would ever forget it. "Are we going to discuss this, or are we just going to ignore it?" Maya's calm voice cut through the stillness. Richard looked up, his face unreadable. For a moment, their eyes locked, and for the first time, he saw something. In her, a quiet power, a presence that made him rethink everything. The room remained silent, waiting for Richard to respond. After what felt like an eternity, he cleared his throat and pushed the contract aside. "You're right," he said, his voice low and begrudging. "We need to review this." His words were laced with a mix of admiration and frustration. "How did you know?" Maya didn't hesitate. "It's just what I do. I used to read contracts all the time." She paused for a beat. "Before life happened." There was a quiet understanding between them. Maya's life had been far from easy, and this moment was the culmination of years of hard work, sacrifice, and the quiet strength that had always defined her. She wasn't some helpless maid. She was a woman who had seen the world for what it was and understood how to navigate it. The executives exchanged glances, still processing the reality of the situation. Richard, now visibly flustered, looked at his team. "You all missed it." "How did this happen?" he muttered. No one answered. They had no excuse. Maya had done what they had all failed to do. She had seen the truth before anyone else. Richard's gaze returned to Maya, and for the first time, he wasn't looking at her like she was just another employee. He was looking at her with respect, something she had earned, not through grand gestures, but through quiet action. Maya didn't want to gloat, didn't want to make this moment about her. She had done her job, and that was enough. But the respect in Richard's eyes, the way he was no longer dismissing her, spoke volumes. This was the beginning of something new. Maya had crossed a line today, and there was no going back. As she left the room, she couldn't help but feel a small sense of pride. She had proven to herself, and to everyone else, that her worth wasn't defined by her job, her appearance, or her past. It was defined by the choices she made, the intelligence she carried, and the quiet strength she exuded. She walked down the hallway, her steps echoing in the silence behind her. She had made her mark, and now, she was ready for whatever came next. "I don't need to remind myself of what I did today," Maya thought as she walked through the quiet hallways of the hotel. The buzz from the boardroom still lingered in the air, but she had already moved past it. The weight of the moment was lifting from her shoulders, and the echo of her footsteps seemed to fade with every step. But even as the adrenaline faded, the realization settled in. She had just changed everything. Maya had never been the type to look for recognition. She didn't need a parade or applause. Her purpose had always been clear: work hard, stay focused, take care of what needed to be done. But today was different. Today, for the first time in years, someone saw her. Someone recognized her for more than just a maid, more than just the girl cleaning up the mess left by others. Richard Hawke's look, the respect in his eyes, it meant something. It meant everything. Maya stepped into the staff break room, the hum of the vending machine filling the silence. She had almost forgotten how long it had been since she had felt like she mattered. She wasn't just another worker in a hotel full of transient faces. She had made a difference, and that difference had been acknowledged. She didn't know what would happen next, but she was no longer afraid. Before she could even sit down, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her old colleague, Nathaniel, someone she hadn't spoken to in years. "Maya, I saw what happened in the boardroom. You're incredible. I'm so sorry for what happened to you, but if you're interested, I can help. You don't have to stay in this life." She stared at the message for a moment, her heart pounding. Nathaniel had always been one of the few people who understood her. He had been the one who helped her get her first job in finance, the one who had urged her to keep going when the world tried to push her down. Maya's fingers hovered over the screen, unsure of what to do. She had built this life from nothing, and it hadn't been easy. She had worked her way up from nothing, scrubbing floors, running errands, all the while juggling her dreams and her responsibilities. She wasn't sure she could just walk away from everything now. She wasn't sure if she was ready to take the leap. But as she stared at the phone, she realized something. She wasn't the same person anymore. Something had shifted today. Something inside her had clicked into place. Maya knew that the choice was hers to make, and whatever she decided, it would be her decision alone. The old life, the life of cleaning and serving, felt distant now, almost like a different version of herself. She had always been the one to take care of others, to make sure everyone else was okay, but today, she had taken care of herself in a way she hadn't before. She had stood up for herself, and it had made all the difference. The text message buzzed again. Nathaniel had followed up with, "Think about it, Maya. I'm here if you need me." Maya put the phone down and sighed. The room around her felt different now. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving. She was living. She had fought for her worth, and today, she had won. It wasn't about money, it wasn't about prestige, it was about knowing that she was more than just the job she held, more than just the place she had come from. She was capable of so much more, and the world had just begun to see it. I woke up the next morning with a sense of clarity that I hadn't felt in years. Maya sat on the edge of her bed, staring out the window at the rising sun. The world outside seemed different somehow, as if it was waiting for her to make the next move. She felt a sense of calm, mixed with a nervous excitement. Yesterday, she had made a choice. She had stood up in front of the most powerful people in the room, and she had been heard. That was something she never expected. That was something she hadn't dared to dream of. Maya stood up, walked to the bathroom, and splashed cold water on her face. The reflection in the mirror was a little different now, a little more confident. Her eyes had always held a quiet strength, but now there was a spark in them, a spark she hadn't noticed before. She dried her face with a towel and looked back at her phone. There was a new message from Nathaniel. "Maya, I'm still thinking about what we talked about yesterday. I know it's a big decision, but I think you're ready. You've always been more than you let on." Maya stared at the message for a moment. She could feel her pulse quicken. It wasn't just the offer that made her heart race, it was the realization that she was ready for more. She had spent so much of her life making others feel comfortable, making sure everyone else's needs were met, but now, for the first time, she was thinking about what she wanted. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew one thing: she was done hiding. She had already proven to herself that she was capable of more than anyone had given her credit for, and that included herself. Maya stood tall and walked out of her apartment, her step steady and sure. The world outside was buzzing with life, and for the first time in a long time, Maya felt like she was part of it. She wasn't just a maid, a servant, or a worker anymore. She was someone with power, with a voice that could no longer be ignored. As she walked down the busy street, she passed by people lost in their own worlds, but she wasn't just one of them. She was different now. She had a purpose. Maya had spent too many years playing it small, too many years convincing herself that she didn't deserve more. But she had just proven to herself that she could handle anything that came her way. She was ready for the next step, whatever that was. And for the first time, the future didn't seem so scary. Maya smiled to herself. She was no longer just surviving. She was living. And living meant taking chances, making decisions, and most of all, believing in herself. She had earned her place in the world, and she wasn't about to let anyone, or anything, take that away from her. I've never been one to back down from a challenge, but there was something about the offer that Nathaniel had made that felt different. Maya sat in the small coffee shop, her fingers wrapped around the warm cup in front of her. The steam rose in delicate tendrils, but her mind was far from the soothing scent of coffee. She could hear the words Nathaniel had sent her echoing in her mind. "I think you're ready. You've always been more than you let on." It was the first time in a long time that someone saw her potential and not just the role she played in the world. For years, Maya had hidden behind the mask of the maid, the worker who quietly observed, always staying in the background. But now, after everything that had happened, she wasn't sure if she could wear that mask anymore. She had already proven that she could handle a boardroom full of billionaires, that she could see things they couldn't. But was that enough to step back into the world she had left behind? Was she ready to risk everything? The decision weighed heavily on her. She had spent so long living in the shadows, making sure everyone else's needs were met, that she had forgotten her own dreams. The dreams she had buried years ago when she took that first job, cleaning floors and serving others. The dreams she had pushed aside to care for her mother, to survive. But now, those dreams didn't feel so distant. They felt within reach, like she could finally take the step she had always been too afraid to take. Maya glanced down at her phone again. Nathaniel had already given her the opportunity. All she had to do was take it. The idea of leaving behind the life she had known was both thrilling and terrifying. The safe, predictable life of cleaning up after people, of staying out of sight, was comfortable. But was it fulfilling? No. She had always known that there was more out there for her. She had spent years doubting herself, telling herself that the life she had wasn't bad, that she didn't deserve more. But now, after what had happened in that boardroom, she realized just how much she had been selling herself short. She wasn't just a maid. She wasn't just a worker. She was capable of so much more. Maya took a deep breath, standing up from the table. She walked to the counter, her steps steady. The barista smiled at her as she paid for her coffee, but Maya didn't smile back. She wasn't sure if she was ready to make the leap yet, but she knew one thing for sure, she wasn't going to hide anymore. She had nothing to lose by saying yes to the next chapter of her life. She had already made the decision that she would no longer be invisible. As she walked out of the coffee shop and into the bustling street, the weight on her shoulders seemed to lift. She didn't have all the answers yet, but she knew one thing, her life was in her hands now, and she was ready to take control of it. I'm not sure what I expected, but it wasn't this. Maya stood at the entrance of the corporate office building, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and nerves. She had spent days thinking about Nathaniel's offer, running it over in her mind like a puzzle she was trying to piece together. He had given her the opportunity to step back into the world of finance, the world she had left behind years ago. But now that she was here, standing outside the doors of a major investment firm, she wondered if she was truly ready. She had always been the person behind the scenes, the one cleaning up after others, making sure everything ran smoothly while remaining invisible. It had become her safe place. But now, she was being given a chance to step into the spotlight, to show everyone what she was truly capable of. Maya took a deep breath and walked through the revolving doors. The lobby was sleek and modern, the walls lined with polished marble and the floors gleaming under the fluorescent lights. She felt a rush of memories flood back, the feeling of walking through corporate offices, sitting in high-stakes meetings, making decisions that mattered. It felt both foreign and familiar at the same time. She approached the reception desk, where a woman with a warm smile greeted her. "How can I help you today?" she asked. Maya hesitated for a moment before answering, "I'm here for a meeting with Nathaniel Barnes." The receptionist nodded and motioned toward the elevator. "He's expecting you. The 15th floor." Maya nodded and stepped into the elevator, the doors sliding closed behind her. As the elevator ascended, she could feel her pulse quickening. This was it. The moment she had been waiting for. She had always been good at analyzing numbers, at reading between the lines, at understanding the hidden truths that others missed. But now, she was about to put that to the test. She wasn't just coming back into finance as an observer anymore. She was here to take charge, to show the world that she belonged. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped out into the lobby of the 15th floor. The space was quiet, the only sound the soft click of her heels against the floor. Nathaniel was waiting for her in a glass-walled conference room, his eyes lighting up as she walked in. "Maya," he said, standing up to greet her. "I'm so glad you're here." She offered a small smile, her nerves beginning to settle. "Thanks for this, Nathaniel. I've been thinking about it a lot." He motioned for her to sit. "I know this is a big step, but I wouldn't have asked if I didn't think you were ready." Maya sat down, her hands resting on the table in front of her. She could feel the weight of the moment, the gravity of the decision she had made. This wasn't just a job offer. This was a chance to reshape her life, to prove that she wasn't just someone who served others. She was someone who could lead, who could make an impact. "I've spent my whole life being the person who takes care of things," Maya began, her voice steady but full of conviction. "I've always been the one who makes sure everyone else is okay. But I'm done with that. I want to take care of myself now. I want to show what I can really do." Nathaniel smiled, his eyes full of understanding. "That's exactly why I reached out to you. You're not just a maid, Maya. You're a force. I've seen it in you for a long time." Maya felt a rush of emotions flood through her. She had spent so long doubting herself, telling herself that she didn't deserve more. But now, sitting in this room, she realized that she had always been capable of so much more. She wasn't just a worker. She was a leader in the making. And today, she was going to prove it. "I'm here to make a change," Maya thought, as she walked into the sleek, glass-walled conference room. The room, filled with light, felt like a world away from the small hotel rooms and cramped spaces where she had spent most of her adult life. She glanced at Nathaniel, who had a proud smile on his face. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she belonged. "Are you ready for this?" Nathaniel asked, leaning back in his chair, his voice calm but with a hint of excitement. Maya nodded, feeling the weight of the question sink in. This was it. There was no turning back now. "I've been ready," she replied, her voice steady. "It's just about proving it to myself." Nathaniel gave her a knowing look, and for a moment, Maya saw something in his eyes that she hadn't expected: respect. He didn't see her as just a woman who had once worked in a hotel, cleaning rooms and serving others. He saw her as a force, as someone who could make an impact. She had worked hard to be where she was, but the real challenge had always been believing in herself. "All right, let's do this," Nathaniel said, sliding a folder across the table toward her. Inside were documents, plans, projections, and opportunities that would shape her future. Maya opened the folder and took a deep breath. The numbers in front of her were more than just figures on a page. They were the first step in building something bigger. She could see herself in these plans, see how her experience, her background, and her intuition could contribute to something greater. For the first time, she felt like the pieces were coming together. It wasn't just about getting back into finance. It was about claiming her place at the table, about making her voice heard. Maya knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. She wasn't naive enough to think that her past wouldn't follow her. There would be people who would try to doubt her, people who would question her ability. But she was done with playing small. She had spent too many years apologizing for who she was and for the choices she had made. Now, she was taking control. She picked up the pen Nathaniel had slid across the table and signed the first document. The sound of the pen on paper felt louder than it was. Each stroke felt like a victory, each word a promise she was making to herself. She wasn't just signing papers, she was claiming her future. Nathaniel smiled as he watched her, and for a brief moment, the office felt like it was hers too. The world outside the glass walls seemed to fade as she focused on what was in front of her. This was her moment. This was her chance. And no one could take it from her. As she finished signing, Maya leaned back in her chair, feeling the weight of the decision settle in. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She wasn't just someone cleaning up after others. She was someone who could build, create, and change the world around her. And she was ready to start. "You did it," Nathaniel said, his voice full of pride. Maya looked at him, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I did," she said softly, but with conviction. "Now, it's time to show them what I'm made of." Maya felt the weight of the day settle on her shoulders as she walked out of the office building. The air outside was cool, a welcome relief after the intensity of the meeting. She had signed the contract, taken the first step into her new life, but the journey ahead still felt uncertain. It was only now, with the city stretching out before her, that the reality of it all hit her. She wasn't just going back into the finance world. She wasn't just playing catch-up or trying to fit into a space that had never truly been hers. She was reshaping it. And she was doing it for herself. She had made her choice, and now there was no turning back. Maya had always been afraid of change, afraid of what it might cost her. She had spent too many years letting fear guide her decisions. But that was no longer who she was. She wasn't afraid anymore. She had stood in that boardroom and had her voice heard, and for the first time, she realized that she had the power to choose her own path. As she stood at the corner of the street, waiting for the light to change, her phone buzzed. It was Nathaniel. "How are you feeling?" he asked. Maya smiled as she looked at the message. She had spent the past few days wrestling with doubt, but now, after everything, she knew the answer. She typed back quickly, "I'm feeling good. Really good." She hit send and put the phone away. The light changed, and Maya crossed the street. The future was waiting for her. The world she had left behind, the world of cleaning rooms and serving others, was still there, but it no longer held the same power over her. She had proven that she was capable of more. And now, she was ready to take on the challenges that came with it. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be obstacles, setbacks, and people who doubted her, but Maya was no longer concerned with what others thought. She had been underestimated for too long, but those days were behind her. She was no longer playing by anyone else's rules. She was going to create her own. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle into her bones. This was her time. And no one could take that away from her. As she walked down the street, her steps were steady, her posture confident. Maya had taken the leap, and she wasn't looking back. The world was open to her, and she was going to make the most of it. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the streets, the last golden rays filtering through the trees, illuminating the sidewalk in soft, amber hues. Maya walked slowly, her pace unhurried, her footsteps light as if the weight of the day had finally left her. The air was cool now, a gentle breeze tugging at her jacket, carrying with it the distant sounds of the city, cars humming, the chatter of people, the rhythmic pulse of life continuing, unaware of the quiet shift that had just taken place. She felt the lightness in her chest, not from the freedom she had just claimed, but from the quiet peace that had settled within her. She had crossed a threshold, but this moment wasn't about triumph or victory. It wasn't about the meetings or the deals or the recognition. It was about something deeper. The change she had been seeking, the one she hadn't been able to articulate, had already happened. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it had transformed her. She wasn't the person who walked into that office building just a few days ago. She was different now. In the quiet of the evening, as she turned the corner, the soft rustle of the leaves underfoot seemed louder than it was, almost as if the world was holding its breath with her. The weight of her decision, the power of her choice, hung in the air like a delicate thread, invisible but strong. The streetlights flickered to life as the sky deepened into shades of navy and violet, casting long, cool shadows on the ground. Maya stopped for a moment, just standing there, feeling the evening wrap around her like a blanket. The distant sound of a train passing echoed softly through the streets. She closed her eyes, inhaling the cool night air, feeling the tension that had held her body so tightly for so long finally begin to ease. There was no applause, no fanfare, just the quiet hum of the world moving forward. In that moment, Maya felt the steady beat of her own heart, a quiet rhythm that had always been there, now more familiar than ever. It was a heartbeat of peace, of understanding, of quiet strength. She didn't need the world to recognize her worth. She had already done that. The change had happened within her. And that was enough. She opened her eyes, her gaze steady, taking in the simple beauty of the world around her. The city still moved, the people still lived their lives, but Maya knew that this moment, this quiet stillness, was all hers. And as the light continued to fade, she walked on, her steps deliberate, the path ahead as open and uncertain as the night sky above her. There was no need for more. There was only the quiet of knowing, the quiet of change, and the quiet of peace.